Hi, my name is Dennis, and welcome to the ZetaChain Hackathon. In this workshop, we're going to go through all the details about what ZetaChain is, what kind of applications you can build with it, and we'll dive into documentation and explore the examples we have so you're prepared to embark on this journey with this hackathon. So what ZetaChain is it's the first universal blockchain. ZetaChain provides a platform for global access, simplicity, and utility across any blockchain. What this means in practice is ZetaChain provides a platform for developers to build universal EVM applications. To accomplish this, ZetaChain uses a chain abstraction framework that allows you to build an app, deploy it on ZetaChain, and any user of any connected chain can interact with it seamlessly, including native Bitcoin. This gives you, as a developer, an opportunity to build and deploy just once and get this future-proof compatibility. When new chains are added connected to ZetaChain, your app automatically becomes compatible with them with mostly no changes at all to the contract. ZetaChain features familiar EVM developer experience, so if you've ever built contracts on Ethereum, you would feel right at home. Everything that works on Ethereum works on ZetaChain. ZetaChain also offers unified liquidity, native settlement for assets, and it manages the complexity of building multi-chain applications for you. So you can just focus on building the dApp that you want to build. It's chain and layer agnostic. It supports both EVM chains and as well as chains that don't even support smart contracts like Bitcoin. So currently on testnet, Ethereum, BNB, and Bitcoin are connected. More chains coming soon. So you can experiment with EVM chains and as well as Bitcoin right now. So let's talk about why would you build on ZetaChain. First of all, I think it's accessibility. It provides a user experience that you don't really get anywhere else. For example, if you're a Bitcoin user and you want to send someone USDC on Ethereum, but the only thing you have is Bitcoin, you can't really do that with regular bridges, right? You would have to manually bridge your asset and have native gas tokens of the chain that you're sending tokens on to cover the gas fees. With ZetaChain, that's not the case. You can, as a Bitcoin user, you can sign a single transaction, and this transaction contains essentially an intent that is transported to a contract on ZetaChain, and a universal app on ZetaChain interprets it. And if your goal is to send someone USDC, it will swap the BTC that you send it for USDC and withdraw it to Ethereum and send it to the destination, all in a single contract and accessible from any chain. So of course you can go the other way around. So it's very powerful. A single transaction triggers a sequence of events thanks to the universal contract on ZetaChain. Transaction logic occurs atomically in your smart contract, which reduces the attack surface, and your funds are never at risk. It's just a single contract that handles all the transactions. So all this works thanks to the universal EVM stack, which includes chain abstraction framework that essentially abstracts away all the complexities of dealing with different blockchains, right? For you as a developer, it's just a single API that you use. All tokens from these blockchains are represented on ZetaChain as ZRC20 tokens, which are ERC compatible, ERC20 compatible. So it's a very familiar environment, but at the same time, it gives you a lot of powerful features, like accepting input from chains and producing outputs on chains. So under the hood, it's powered by a universal proof of stake consensus mechanism. So ZetaChain is built with Cosmos SDK, so it's a very familiar environment from EVM point of view, but it's also a sovereign blockchain. So the chain abstraction framework acts as this connectivity layer between blockchains like Ethereum and Bitcoin that in practice uses a set of observer signer validators. So we have two types of validators on ZetaChain: core validators that deal primarily with consensus, that secure the network, but we also have observer signers that observe connected chains and sign transactions on behalf of the protocol. They're using TSS mechanism to hold custody of the tokens. So at no point in time the tokens that are in the custody of validators are accessible to any single entity. It's always a process between validators to sign outgoing transactions. And this framework allows universal contracts on ZetaChain to manage native assets on all these blockchains. So your universal app on ZetaChain can issue a command to send someone USDC on BNB, for example. So this is very familiar from developer experience point of view. It's just a regular EVM augmented with interoperability features. So to start building, you would clone a hard hat template, install dependencies, run a command to create a new universal app, compile it, deploy it on ZetaChain, and then you can interact with it the same way you would interact with any other application, except here you deploy on ZetaChain, but you can actually interact with this app from Ethereum. So here you can see that we issue an interact command and we specify the network Sepolia. So a transaction is broadcasted to the Sepolia testnet, and then the observer signer validators pick up this transaction, vote on it, process it, and if it succeeded, then if the vote succeeded, then a universal app on ZetaChain is called, and you can handle the message transferred through that transaction and also the assets. So universal apps are really powerful because they are automatically connected to all the chains. So imagine if you had message passing, you would have to deploy contracts on a bunch of different blockchains. You had to synchronize the state, ensure that the contracts are up to date and that everything works seamlessly together. With universal apps, you just have to worry about one contract, and everything related to interactions with other blockchains are handled by the chain abstraction framework that ZetaChain provides. So you don't have to worry about that. You just have to build your application. Of course, all this is decentralized and secure. It's a modular Cosmos SDK blockchain with instant finality provided by Comet BFT, very fast block times, and as soon as a transaction is included in a block, it's final. It uses Zeta token for network security as well as for paying gas and governance. And TSS, threshold signature scheme, is used on connected chains to manage assets. So for example, when you're sending ETH to your universal app on ZetaChain, you would send this ETH to a TSS address on Ethereum, and it will be transferred as ZRC20 to your universal app, and then you can swap it for another asset, or you can lock it, or do whatever you want with it. So universal apps are a different architecture compared to the common messaging systems. So with messaging, you have point-to-point architecture essentially, right? You have if you have 3 chains, you have 3 connections. If you have 4 chains, you now have 6 connections, and the more chains you connect, the more connections there are, and the more um, overhead you have. And this works, but the complexity of this becomes overwhelming once you have dozens of chains. So with ZetaChain, we approach this as a hub and spoke model, right? We use this architecture where ZetaChain acts as a hub that has all the contracts deployed, and these contracts can talk to all these blockchains. So when a new chain is added, the only connection you have to worry about is to this new chain. And of course, you don't have to establish this connection yourself. That's done for you by the chain abstraction framework. So you just build your app and handle incoming transfers and produce outputs. And of course, messaging also doesn't support Bitcoin, right? You don't have um, uh, Bitcoin is not that programmable, so messaging systems typically don't support Bitcoin. With ZetaChain, that's not the case. Users on Bitcoin can natively interact with your Universal app, send BTC, send messages, and your Universal app can also produce outputs and send BTC to users of the Bitcoin network. So let's dive in a bit into how this works using a DEX as an example, right? So everyone's familiar how DEXs work. You have a DEX contract, and at the bottom you see an example of a DEX using messaging. So what you would do as a user is um, you would swap your assets on the source chain. You would have to interact with a messaging contract that sends a message, and as well as value in some way, not necessarily in the token that you want to swap, right? So perhaps in a ERC20 token of this messaging protocol, and then a contract on the destination chain receives this message, handles it, probably calls a swap on the destination chain to get the tokens that you actually need, and then you transfer these tokens to the recipient. So this works, but it's a bit complex, and you incur slippage in two on two chains, and interacting with these contracts can be expensive. With ZetaChain, the contract is actually on ZetaChain. So what happens if you want to send someone USDT on the BNB chain, for example, you send ETH or whatever source token you have to a special ZetaChain address on Ethereum called TSS. The value gets transferred to the contract on ZetaChain. The contract then swaps the token using one of the liquidity pools available for the destination token, for the ZRC20 version of the destination token, and then it withdraws the token to the destination chain. So the only swap you have to do is on ZetaChain. It's much cheaper because ZetaChain can process a lot of transactions, very efficient, and then you just withdraw the destination token to the recipient on the BNB chain. So it's more efficient in terms of gas, it's more efficient in terms of slippage, and it's much less complex in terms of architecture. And of course, you can do the same with Bitcoin, right? Imagine you want, as a Bitcoin user, you want to interact with the swap contract, and you want to send USDT to someone. You can't do that with messaging. You can do this with Universal apps on ZetaChain. So, as I said, Universal apps is a more flexible, more future-proof architecture. We're planning on adding many more chains, and you wouldn't have to worry about any of this. It's just going to work. So the compatibility with Bitcoin offers interesting opportunities for building smart contracts for Bitcoin, right? So you can do anything you want on an EVM side of things, and the interoperability that ZetaChain provides allows you to accept input from Bitcoin. So, for example, you can your universal app can mint NFTs based on uh, token transfers from the Bitcoin network. So someone transferred 0.1 Bitcoin, you can mint an NFT, or you can let users buy uh, NFTs or vote on something. So you can build all sorts of cool things that enable voting based on the amount of tokens that users staked, and then you can build produce yield for people who send these tokens to your contract. So the opportunities are really endless, and just being able to run any kind of code you want based on Bitcoin input is really powerful. And of course, this means that users don't need to install any additional wallets. They frankly don't even need to know about ZetaChain to interact with universal apps. That's where universal part comes from, right? They're just using the wallet that they already have. So on Bitcoin, that might be XDeFi, Xverse, Unisat, OKX, whatever wallet they already have, they can use to interact with ZetaChain and with universal apps on ZetaChain. So on Bitcoin, it actually works exactly the same way as on other blockchains. So there is a special address called TSS on Bitcoin that holds custody of the funds. So again, the custody is um, uh, it's the custody of validators. So no single entity has access to those funds. Users can use their favorite BTC wallet to interact with universal apps. It just takes one single transaction for a sequence of events to happen, and yeah, it basically adds powerful DeFi capabilities to Bitcoin. So to help you build these apps, we created tools and documentation and tutorials to get you up and running. Um, you would probably use ZetaScan. It's our cross-chain explorer, so you can after you broadcasted a transaction on a connected chain, you can look up this transaction, ZetaScan, and track the progress. You can also do that on the CLI if you want. We have extensive documentation, and I'm going to go a bit into that as well, that covers a lot of use cases and guides you through building universal apps. So what can you build? Well, frankly, anything that you can build on Ethereum, you can build on ZetaChain, but it's enhanced with interoperability. So if on an EVM chain you have a swap, building a swap on ZetaChain will make it a cross-chain or omni-chain swap that lets users swap between blockchains. If it's a marketplace of for NFTs, uh, building this on ZetaChain, or like taking an existing NFT marketplace and deploying it on ZetaChain, modifying it a bit, will allow users from any connected chain to purchase NFTs. And of course, it's great for applications like gaming, where you have in-game items and you want to allow people to buy these items with whatever token they already have, so including Bitcoin, right? So now you can build the payment logic for a game on ZetaChain that accepts Bitcoin natively, and it's all decentralized. So it's a really powerful mechanism to essentially augment any existing application, but also allows you to kind of experiment and build new interesting applications. You can use Bitcoin as collateral for stable coins. You can use it for lending, and yeah, it's a super powerful mechanism, and I think it's really good for intent-centric apps as well, because what happens when a user interacts with a universal app is they describe the state that they want to be in, right? They want someone specific on Ethereum to receive 100 USDC, and they supply Bitcoin in this transaction, and the rest is taken care of. The rest is handled by your universal app. Okay, so we kind of went through all the things important about ZetaChain and like what you can build. Let's go in the documentation, because this is a hackathon. This is probably the first thing you're gonna interface with, right? So if you go to zetachain.com/docs, you will see the documentation covers a lot of things, but you're probably more interested in the build section and the tool section. So in build, I strongly recommend you to read about the universal apps and how to interact with them, uh, as well as details about universal EVM and the components of the CVM, right? What is a system contract? How you can interact with Bitcoin? You can learn about about account addresses. So ZetaChain is a Cosmos SDK chain and an EVM chain. So you have EVM hex addresses, but you also have Bech32 addresses. But the most important thing probably is tutorials. So I recommend starting from the very first one and go up to Bitcoin front end, because this covers all the most important concepts about building universal apps. So a good example is a swap. It's just one use case. Of course, you can build anything, but everyone knows how swaps work. So this is just a good opportunity to take your knowledge about a domain like swapping and then understand how it would work on a universal platform like ZetaChain. Um, I think the connector tutorials might not be relevant anymore. They're still here for backwards compatibility, but we're deprecating the connector. So I encourage you to check out these tutorials: swap, staking, NFT, and of course learn about Bitcoin front end and skip the rest, to ensure that you're using the latest tech that is available. Uh, I didn't mention it earlier, but you have a lot of tools that can help you build applications, like API providers, as well as Oracle, account abstraction, data indexer. So you have Node API and subgraphs from Alchemy, Goldsky and NVO for indexing, Pyth, Oracle, account abstraction provided by Particle Network, and we have more applications. Of course, these are just the ones we have tutorials for. Okay, so next, I strongly encourage you to read more about the tokens, what kind of tokens we have, especially about ZRC20. So ZRC20 is the token standard that represents tokens sent from connected chains to universal apps on ZetaChain, so do check it out. As well as the tools section, where you can learn more about the network, get latest API or PC endpoints, as well as contract addresses. So yeah, this should cover pretty much everything. So again, I strongly encourage you to check out tutorials first. I think it's the best way to start building. You see how applications work right on your machine, using existing testnets. So yeah, well, thanks so much for taking the time to learn more about ZetaChain. I hope you have a lot of fun implementing your ideas and using ZetaChain interoperability. We have a Discord server, so if you have any questions, feel free to join the Dev General channel and ask about how to build apps, and we're here to help. Thank you so much, and good luck with the hackathon.